I'm Jimmy Bach. This is History with Jimmy, along with our award-winning producer, Chandler Holmes. And as we're getting to the end of our filming episodes this year, we still have one or two more to do. But we want to again talk about mining because it was so prevalent in this area between Chickasha, Mackinac, Glen Lyon, Sugar Notch, Alden, so many places it was known for mining, and that's what most of the jobs were for. So today we're going to talk about one of them, that this was the Susquehanna Coal Company. This was a breaker from 1885, and this was actually the second largest breaker in the world. And this was in Glen Lyon. Here's a picture of it, of what it looked like, and if you come to the museum, you'll be able to see these pictures maybe a little bit better. The other one is a fairly large picture as well. And then in the back you can see, this is what Glen Lyon looked like. I mean, it was huge. I won't say city, but a very large town, and a lot of people lived there. Immigrants come from the different areas and worked in the mines and stuff. So it was very important for Glen Lyon. We also were given this particular picture. A gentleman from Glen Lyon gave us these pictures. He lived right next to the coal breaker, and this was a machine that was used to put the cars down inside the mines and stuff. This is a pretty rare picture to be able to have that. We also have something very rare. We've shown it on one of our other episodes. If you come, you'll be able to see a little bit better. And then this is what actually happened to this breaker. It actually burnt down. And the gentleman that took these pictures lived very close to the breaker and stuff, and he was able to save these pictures and give them to us. But the important part of this particular episode, which is episode 74, is growing up in coal country, and it's talking about these young kids. And I just got this particular book. Cheryl will have this at the library. We have another book about the breaker boys and stuff. But breaker boys actually were very, very important for the operation of the mines, and most people don't know about it. And this book was written by Susan Campbell Barletta. And so I want to acknowledge her for this great book that she wrote. We're talking about some of the boys, excuse me, that would sit here. And here we have a better picture, but it shows in this book, this particular picture, of these boys that were sitting down for 8-10 hours a day, and they weren't allowed to wear gloves. Their job was to separate the coal from the rocks and some of the other things that would get in there, and the guy had a whip, and if they didn't do their job right, they were hit with this. So, and a lot of the boys died, and nothing was ever said about whatever happened to these boys. To give you an example, they weren't allowed to wear gloves. And if it discovered they were wearing gloves, the boss would strike our knuckles with the long stick that he carried. And it shows in this particular picture. As a result, for the first few weeks, sulfur muck on the river irrigated the boys' skin and caused their fingers to swell. They opened and cracked and bled, and it was called red tips. After the boys worked there for 2 or 3 weeks, their fingers hardened, there was no more red tips, and in the meantime, their mother applied goose grease to their fingers every night. So I'm going to read some of the things from this book, and it's a very interesting book. I encourage you to come and get it. There were very many dangerous conditions, and there was one boy who they got caught in the conveyor, and some small boys fell down the long coal chutes and became buried and smothered in coal. One ballad tells about a small boy named Mickey Pickaslate, who was a breaker boy near Hazleton. One day Mickey fell into the crusher and rolls around and ground up with the coal. His mother, who had walked him to and from work each day, lost her mind. Each day she continued to wait at the breaker for him. scanning the sooty face of each young boy as he walked past looking for her Mickey. Mickey picked slate, early and late. This was this little boy's breaker's fate. A simple woman at the breaker still waits to take home her Mickey picked slate. He never made it home. That was one of the boys that got lost and died. But I think one of the most important stories I'm going to tell you is that about a certain boy and what happened to him in the mines. But breaker boys were named nippers, spraggers, and mule drivers. So they had other jobs in the mines, and one of them had to do with opening and closing the doors. Another one had to do with the mules. And believe it or not, the mules became the pets of these boys that were in there. And they would take sugar cubes and give them to them. The mules were very intelligent. If you read this book, it tells all about how intelligent the mules were and how they knew where to stop. The boys were also had jobs that were called nippers, and that was another thing to do it. But and they were also called spraggers. So they had many different jobs that they did, but they were also called the mule drivers. And so we have one last story here that I'm going to tell as soon as I find it, and it's called William McKinney and His Mule. And that's what the name of this episode is going to be about, because when you hear this story, it's very, I don't know how to quite say it, but when you read it, you think about these young boys that went in there and, like I said, went for these jobs, never got an education, died at a very early age. They died because of black lung, just like the miners did, and they worked to put food on the tables and stuff. So we want to make sure here at the Shikshini Historical Society FLT Museum that they do get remembered. So this is William McKinney and his mule. On Easter Monday in 1879, mule driver William McKinney told his mother not to pack much lunch for him because he planned to be home early. He sneaked extra lumps of sugar into his pocket for his mule Harry. That was his pet, named Harry. At work, William and Harry plodded along the gangway, and all of a sudden, he saw rats heading up the slope. That's for another story about the rats in the mines. A few seconds later, he heard a terrible crash, a gust of wind. It pulled the mule back and knocked William off the mine car. A large cave-in had crushed the gangway and the airway, and I thought of the men inside, said William. Here's a young boy, and he knows about these other men that are in the mines working. He said, I knew the air was shut off and that someone would be burned or blown up if we didn't go in and warn them. He risked his life for the other men, this young boy and his mule. So I gave Harry a jab in the ribs and with the sprag, and away we went. William found 2 gangs of men and warned them, and then another cave-in occurred. It was like a big thunderstorm with timbers crackling and splitting until broken. We were trapped. Everything around us was sealed tight. Harry and I were alone with 7 other men. For 3 days, William and the men waited for rescue. As they sat there, they talked about family and friends. Imagine for 3 days being trapped in darkness. All they had was a little bit of a light, a carbide light left on their helmet that they had light to see. They talked about family and friends. Their lunches were gone. All they had left were 2 gallons of oil and 4 safety lamps, which was the other lighting that they had left. And on the 4th day, with no sign of help, there was still nothing to eat. Imagine, nothing to eat or drink. It's day number 4. And when I looked at the others, said William, their eyes seemed to be bulging out of their heads and they looked wild. Finally, one of the men looked at Harry and said, I think if I had a piece of that mule, I'd eat it. Imagine that. They wanted to eat his pet mule. After much thought, William said, I'll bring the mule here, but I won't kill it. One of you will have to. He couldn't kill his pet mule, but they did. As William held Harry by the bridle, Harry sniffed William's pocket for sugar. Through tears, William told the mule, "Harry, I guess I'll never give you any more sugar because I'm going to have to take you out to be made into meat so these men could live." So these men could live. Harry was killed, cut up and fried on the lid of a lunch pail. And after 9 days, rescues found the entombed men. When William came out, his mother was overjoyed to see him. She gave him the new suit that she had planned to bury him in, because they never expected these men and this boy to come out of the mines. 9 days. 9 days they were there. And if it wasn't for this mule, they would not have survived. That's the story of William McKinney and his mule, and that's what episode 74 is about. And I hope that as you see the episodes that Chandler and I do, that you realize that we're working to preserve history, but we're telling the story about sacrifices that these boys and men made to make our lives better today. Because they went into that black hellhole every day, not knowing whether they were going to come back out. Just like these men and this boy. And the mule never came back out. This is Jimmy Bach along with Chandler Holmes. Thank you for watching episode 74. I hope you'll click the like and subscribe button and come to the museum for a tour. My cell phone number is 570-905-7519. Thank you.